I've had folks, it's amazing. My wife and I would be at a restaurant and I would have a waitress, "Oh, you're Judge Johnson. You're the one who fined me for writing a bad check." And so from that point forward, you wonder, if you worry about your food. And I had a surgical procedure not too long ago. And the recovery nurse said, "You don't remember me, do you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm fixing to die." And I said, "No, ma'am, I'm sorry." She said, "Well, this is like 10 or 15 years ago." She said, "My husband left me for another woman. And I was in nursing school at the time, and you made him pay for my nursing school as a part of alimony. And that's the reason I'm here today." And she made a statement, "You took care of me then, and I'm taking care of you now." Oh, well, it didn't take long to learn about the job itself. One is that everybody wants justice until it comes to them, and then they want mercy. Some of the same folks who scream the loudest wanting justice, if it's their family involved in something, then it's time for mercy. And I always thought that's somewhat hypocritical. From my perspective, it's been a good place to live. As far as post-cleanup, remember, I was a child when all that was taking place. So I really wasn't that familiar with all of it. Other than this, Albert Fuller farm was probably less than a mile from where we lived, all over the dirt road. And one of my brothers, after Albert's wife, after his widow died, somehow the family was leasing the property, and one of my brother's friends, one of my younger brothers who's deceased now, had a friend who was living in that house. And they were up in the attic and ran across a lot of old letters and things like that and started talking about it. And within 3 or 4 days, that house burned. So, I've always wondered about that and what was actually contained in some of those letters. It was Albert writing to his wife.
Who was Albert Fuller?
He's the one who was convicted for killing Albert Patterson. Tell you a couple of folks that I've met, and it's given me some different perspective. We went to the Russian embassy. This was in January of '72, I think. And it's almost like something from an old movie. All the guys in there were short and chubby. They were trench coats carrying submachine guns. I mean, you'd think it was a movie set when you actually walked into the embassy compound there. And this little guy comes in with a big birthmark on the front of his head and starts lecturing us about how bad America is.
It was Gorbachev?
Gorbachev. And then the next day, this was when George Bush, I call him George the Greater, was ambassador to the United Nations, and we had an opportunity to interview him. So, that I wouldn't take anything for those experiences, but to bring that back, the world doesn't revolve around Phoenix City, Alabama, or Russell County. And a lot of folks don't realize that. One of the first cases I tried as a young district judge 30 years ago, over 30 I guess, it was a domestic abuse case. The man had beat his wife, he'd done it on several other occasions, and I actually put him in jail for beating his wife. That was an outroar. I even had folks at church get on me for putting a man in jail for beating his wife. And I'm thinking, what in the world? It's almost, I hate to use this term, but it's almost a backwoods mindset. That, there are certain things that, the law didn't interfere with. And that you didn't interfere with a family like that. Even though it was domestic abuse. And that's one thing I'm glad to see has come to the forefront now, that we're no longer accepting domestic abuse. The most difficult thing I've done since I've been on the bench was when I was juvenile judge. And it would get to me so badly, I guess is the way to put it, that one day after court, I literally went in the chambers, got down on my knees and prayed to God Almighty to let me forget what I just seen. when you see 6-month-old babies who have gonorrhea and syphilis because the mothers have prostituted them out for crack cocaine. When you see a year-old baby who's literally been beat almost to death because the mother's mentally ill with a fire poker. That's rough.
And those cases don't come to light in Alabama because they're sealed. I mean, there are things here you're telling us that we never see.
You would never see it. But that's the most difficult. Sentencing a man to death, I've always followed the jury recommendation. I think, I'm trying to remember, I think it was unanimous each time I've done that. I recently had a capital case and the jury was unanimous, life without parole.
And you went with them.
And I went with them. I've never overridden the jury. Now let me say this, I'm not criticizing judges who've done that, because in the required sentence hearing outside the presence of the jury, sometimes information is presented that the judge doesn't have. That the jury didn't have, excuse me. So I'm not criticizing a judge for overriding a jury, either way.
But that goes back to what you said a little while ago, let the decision stand.
That's it.
I mean, that's a pretty basic, it sounds like a basic philosophy you've used for good or bad for 30 years.
Tried to do it that way. And believe it or not, I tend to be one of those. But the unfortunate reality in the state of Alabama is, in order to be a judge, you've got to get elected. In order to get elected, you've got to be a politician. I mean, that's the unfortunate reality. And one of the things that I've been trying to get done since I was in the legislature, as a matter of fact, I was in the legislature in '82, I was elected. And it was nonpartisan election of judges.
Which in Georgia is the case.
That is the case. And even, to me, it's ironic, our city council doesn't run by party. It's nonpartisan. But yet we make judges, folks who are supposed to be fair and unbiased, we make them participate in bitterly partisan politics. Now,
is that wrong-headed thinking?
Absolutely, it's wrong-headed thinking. You've got good Democratic judges who get beaten because they're Democrats. You've got good Republican judges get beaten because they're Republicans. That doesn't make sense. It's just absolutely wrong-headed.
Last time I looked, there's not a Democrat on the Alabama Supreme Court.
There's not a Democrat appellate judge in the state of Alabama. In fact, I don't think there's a Democratic official in the state of Alabama statewide now. It's that people are looking at the wrong criteria when it comes to judicial selection. I think that's what it says. I ran for the Supreme Court, to be quite candid, because I was fed up with some things that were going on. When I came on the circuit bench, let me back up. A trial judge is expected to basically implement stare decisis. Let the decision stand. Let the decision stand, which means that we are to implement the law as it exists when we're there, when we got a case. Well, Karl Rove comes in with his bunch, and they start electing Supreme Court justices for one purpose, and that's to make sure that the justices do what they want them to do. What I'm saying is this: when the Supreme Court changes, I'm still under the law that is existing at the time. So there were trial judges throughout the state all of a sudden started getting reversed because the Supreme Court of Alabama is now all Republican, a majority Republican, starting in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, and they're changing the law. So it's making us look bad because we're getting reversed for implementing the law that existed at the time we entered our decision. I spent $165,000 when I ran for the Supreme Court. There were some races for the Supreme Court. Over $3 million was spent on one candidate. Now, how in the world can you say that a person who has received $3 million and his biggest contributor has a case in front of them, and guess what's going on? Guess who gets a favorable ruling? Now, if that wasn't true, I'd be in a lot of trouble for saying that. And I went all over the state of Alabama showing cash register. What some folks said was cash register justice was big jury verdicts. To me, cash register justice is when you've got judicial campaigns that cost millions and millions and millions of dollars. That's cash register justice. I'm immensely proud. You know, I am really proud. He's probably coming into the job with his eyes a little bit more wide open than I did, because I've been a judge since he was 3 years old. And you asked me earlier about Russell County being different from other places. The one advantage of being a small town rural judge is this: people know you. They truly know you. If they don't know you personally, they know you by reputation. And to me, several years ago, I had a fellow got irate, and he said, "You're nothing but a small town country judge who smokes cheap cigars." And I said, "Well, you know, whether you realize it or not, you paid me a compliment, because being a small town country judge, the people know me, and they know what I stand for, and they've repeatedly elected me. I think it's time for a change. I'm seeing legislatively, the judges don't have the discretion today that we did have at one time. When I went on the bench, there was a Latin term called oratinis, and that basically is the trial judge heard what went on in the court proceeding. Great deference was given to what the trial judge did based on what he himself heard. The trial judge can look at a witness, and you know that bare record doesn't say the witness is screaming at somebody, or that the witness is fidgeting and avoiding eye contact, like he doesn't want to answer the question. That record doesn't say that, but the trial judge is observing it, and that's the reason under the oratinis rule that at one time a great deference was given to what a trial judge did. That's not the case anymore. Basically now the appellate judges, I refer to them as the de novo courts of appeal. They do what they want to do for the most part. Well, the first couple of months I'm just going to work on my place, try to get it back where I had it at one time.
Your place?
Out in the Crawford, the farm. And
how many acres you got?
105 is what the deed says, so that's what I'm assuming that's what I'm paying taxes on.
What you do on that farm?
Well, we grow a little hay, and the main thing I do is I've got a couple of miles of creek bottom, walking trails and hillsides and all that. And I'm fixing to ruin my reputation. I'm sorry, but I guess I'm going to have to do it. I love wildflowers, and I keep those walking trails. I try to keep them trimmed and mowed somewhat. As a general rule, except for the month of February, I've got some type of wildflower growing on my place. And I just enjoy nature. The deer and turkey have a refuge on our place. I love quail hunting. I was reared quail hunting. In fact, there's a picture of quail on the wall over there. When football season was over, I'd grab a shotgun and my bird dog, and we'd set out on Saturday morning and get back in late that afternoon. I think probably what I'll miss most is the daily interaction with our local attorneys. Lawyers have a bad rep by and large, and because they're in an adversarial business. But I'm just here to tell you, by and large, some of the best folks I know are lawyers. How about that?